Hi, everyone. Welcome to this information session. I'm Marsha Barber. I'm the Graduate Program Director. And Joni, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joni Cole-Abdul. I'm one of the graduate program administrators with the MJ program at Ryerson. Sorry, TMU. I still keep forgetting that. Good to meet you guys.
So the goal today is to have a very informal session. I'll tell you a little bit about the program, just give you a very brief overview, and then it's really over to you for any questions that you might have if you're considering applying to the program. So first of all, I think one of the things that distinguishes us maybe from some other universities is we pride ourselves in the journalism program in being very hands-on. So that means that very quickly within your classes in the first semester, you're out there, you're out on the street, you're doing some reporting. And I'll give you an overview of what that looks like. So in your first semester, you'd be taking these kinds of courses, covering the city, which is a course in municipal reporting, reporting and data methods for journalists, urban politics and society, and law and ethics. So some of the courses are fairly theoretical, but other courses do allow you to get out there in the field fairly quickly. So that would be your first semester. Then by the winter, you're moving into classes that are even more hands-on. So there's producing the news, a digital journalism studio, narrative journalism, innovation and entrepreneurship. Oh, that's very cool. I'm just looking at Keegan's cartoon. So innovation and entrepreneurship in journalism. And then the summer is actually very active. In terms of the summer, you're taking an internship. Most people, there's a little bit of flexibility, in terms of when you take it. You're also doing a development course for what will be your master's research project. Now that project is journalistic in nature. It's not academic. So you're approaching something journalistically that you find fascinating with the help of a supervisor. Then in the second year, you're moving into intense masthead courses. So you're either working in a news masthead or a magazine masthead. And you have a choice of electives. You can take one if you're doing the magazine masthead, and you can take 3 if you're doing the newsroom masthead. And those are in areas such as TV documentary, investigative reporting, health and science, international reporting, a number of different areas, podcasting, depends on your interests. So you'll be choosing those. And doing an editing course. That's the fall. And in the winter, you continue taking those electives and you take a final course in pitching and branding, a masterclass in that. So as you're working on your master's research project, you have a sense of how you will eventually pitch it and how you'll use that to your benefit. So that's what the program looks like. It's fairly small. We have around 20 students, give or take, in the program. And I am interested in your questions, but before I go to that, Joni, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I guess I just wanted to know if anyone at all is comfortable to turn your cameras on. Please feel free to do that, because it makes it a little bit easier for Marsha and I to speak to you. Only if you're comfortable. If you're not, you can leave it as it is. I guess if you want to just shoot out your questions and we can answer them as best we can, that would be great. Thank you, guys.
So I'm looking for any hands. Oh, I see. Tayson? Where are you? Was that a hand?
Yes. Thank you for this wonderful platform. You have introduced us with briefly about the outlook of this program. I just want to ask one question, particularly the question is regarding administrative side. Like I have just complete my one of master program, and I'm really interested in this, in new masters in journalism, and I just confused. Do I need IELTS or any other certificate? Though I'm studying in the Italian university, and here my language courses were in English. So thank you so much.
So you're wondering then whether you need anything beyond your current credentials. As long as you have, and Joni, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as you have a 4-year undergraduate degree, that's the only credential you need to move into the master's program.
That's correct. And along with that, you also need to have a 3.0 GPA. So that's like a B level in the last 2 years of your study. Now,
Yes, sorry for interruption. Do I need a IELTS or any other certificate?
sorry, say that again. Do you need any
Sorry for this interruption, but I just want, do I need a IELTS or any other English certificate?
like proof of English language efficiency?
Yes, yes.
You mean? Yes. So any student that has not completed their undergraduate program within Canada would require proof of English language. Unless you completed that at an English-speaking university. And in that case, you would require your home school to sort of put that in a letter to state, to confirm that you actually completed your study in English language. You would actually upload that with your application.
Does that answer your question? Jason,
Yes,
that
yes,
answer-
yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll also add the admission requirement, the page to the chat. So anyone who needs to look that up can look that up. And also, if you want to find out more about the English language requirements, because that would also include anyone who is taking, like, you could be a Canadian citizen, but you took your undergraduate in Italy or something like that. That would also pertain to you because you took your schooling outside of the country. So this is for the English language.
Okay, so let's move to Kay.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate that. With the admission requirements, now my undergraduate degree is 3 years from Mac. So I've been out of school for quite some time, well over 10 years now. So if I want to apply for the Master of Journalism program, what do I have to do if I don't already have a 4-year undergraduate degree?
Do you want to take that, Joni?
So you don't have a 4-year undergraduate degree?
It's just 3 years.
It's 3
And you took it here in Canada?
at Mac.
At Mac, okay. So in your case, I'm actually not quite sure because I know that the program does require a minimum of the 4 years. But I'm just going to check to see if I have a chart here that could tell us.
I wonder if there's a way. I wonder if somebody can take an extra year, for example.
Yeah, as far as I can see here, it does say that you do require the 4 years. So what I can do is I could, if you want to stay on after the call, or you can email me at mj@ryerson.ca and just ask me the question again, and I can respond to you. And in the meantime, I will investigate that and get back to you. Does that
I
sound
really,
good?
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I will email you as well.
Thanks, Kate. And you got the
Thank you.
email address, right?
mj@ryerson.ca.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
that goes for anyone who, if you think of anything after this section that you might want to ask us, just go ahead and email us later on and we can look things up for you.
And MJ stands for Master of Journalism, to remember, just so you remember that. Chloe?
Hi. So I was just wondering, do a lot of the students that are currently in the program have previous journalistic experience?
I'd say almost all had a portfolio coming into the program. So journalistic experience in the sense that maybe they had written for the undergrad university paper. So some evidence of doing some journalism, a passion for journalism, and that's often expressed in terms of what's in the portfolio. However, virtually no one has a bachelor's in journalism because that would be redundant, or has worked in it. Virtually no one's worked in a journalistic organization. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sophia?
Hi there, thanks so much. I just had a quick question about the internship opportunity during the summer in between the first and second year. I was just wondering, does the university help students kind of organize those placements? Is that something that students do by themselves? And I guess like a second part to that question, I would love if you could just talk a little bit more about that development course as well and what that looks like.
Okay, that's a good question. So let's start with the internships. We do have an internships coordinator. So the internships coordinator meets with students early in the year, usually in October, and starts advising them in terms of where internships are available. I think the answer is they don't tend to place you, but they let you know where the internships are available, and they help guide you through the process as you apply for the internships. And you also asked me about the development course. The development course is for the master's research project. So that's something that's separate. And the research project, for those people who came in late, the research project is journalistic. It's not academic in nature. So if there's something you're really interested in, using an example, maybe there's some aspect of climate change, you're going to decide about the platform, the medium in which you want to work. Is it a multimedia project? Is it a documentary? How are you going to approach it? You work with a supervisor, but the development course helps you additionally develop your master's research project. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi, Grace. You're next.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a question about the portfolio as well. So I recently graduated with my undergraduate degree and I haven't had any chance to have any published work yet, but I've taken a few journalism courses and have some like previous work. I was wondering if we'd be able to submit that in
Absolutely.
the portfolio. Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect.
That's a good way. If you don't have any published work, that's a really good way to approach this. If you've done journalistic work in a course, give us an example of that, for sure.
Okay, is just one example needed?
Well,
or
it depends.
can I...
We ask for up to 6 examples. So if you have, you know, a couple of examples that you're particularly proud of from the course, submit more than one.
Okay, what about non-academic journalistic pieces? Just ones that like I've written just for fun? Is that allowed or no?
we encourage you to stick to journalistic
Okay.
pieces.
Okay, perfect.
It's a professional school, and in terms of the focus on journalism, that focus is very strong. So it helps your case if what you submit is journalistic, not academic.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Estella,
Hi, how are you?
hi. Okay, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I have a question about the grade. So,
Sorry?
for the grades, like the grade, I'm
Oh,
just, my
yes,
question
yes,
will
yes.
be like, what is a competitive grade to apply for this master program? Because in the academic requirements, I saw the minimum GPA is 3.0.
Yes.
Is that, but so from my understanding, it's just a minimum, but it won't be like kind of a competitive grade. So what's kind of the standard you're expecting?
Okay. I'd say that many people who get into the program have A-range grades, but because we place a lot of emphasis on the portfolio and your cover letter, those two areas, we see your application as long as you've cleared the 3.0. So it then comes to the committee, and the committee will look at it if it's 3.0 or above. So I would say, you know, an A-range grade is a nice indication that you're ready to handle the workload because it's quite intense. But a B grade, if you've got a good portfolio and a good cover letter, that will be more, those two things will be more important and will override a lower grade.
Yeah, thank you. A follow-up question I have is if I apply and submit my application, let's say by the end of November, do I need to submit my transcript for this term, like later date?
Well, the first consideration is in January. I think it's mid-January, but Joni, again.
Yeah, it's January 20th.
January
So,
20th.
Yeah.
So it should be in for then. I really encourage you to submit everything by the first consideration date to get it in as early as you can, and certainly by that first consideration date.
And
I
also,
mean, theoretically, we do keep it open after that and applications trickle in. But I think it's in terms of the committee and the committee's availability, I think it will be to your advantage to get it in as early as you can.
Yeah, sorry, kind of my question is, so the first consideration date is around January 20th, right?
It is January.
it is
20th.
January
Yeah,
20th.
does it mean like we all need to submit our like the transcript for the first term of this year, like the fourth year's first term's transcription?
Try to. It doesn't mean, I think it's not as if we don't accept it, but if you can get it in by then, that would work better.
Okay.
Joni, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so that first consideration date is really important because it sort of gives everyone a level playing field. All applications will be looked at in its entirety. So like Marcia said, if you don't have that you know, higher grade point average going in, say you have a stronger cover letter, portfolio, that kind of thing. Because everyone who submits by that first consideration date, you will all be looked at. And that gives you an advantage over someone who applies later on, because those spots start filling up once we get all of our applicants. Like there'll be a first round of consideration, which will go to those people who got their stuff in by that time. So we would encourage you to submit as soon as you can. Another reason you want to submit as soon as possible is because of your referees. You want to give them enough time to write your letters for you, your letters of reference, and get those into us. So the earlier you apply, a notification will be sent out to your referee for them to submit their letters to us on your behalf. But in terms of your transcript, you can have an unofficial transcript submitted for the initial review. And once, once you actually receive an offer, we'll ask you to submit an official transcript. So that might be helpful. That way, you can look up your grades online and you'll be able to send us something that way instead of the official transcript. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. Thank you. Sorry, I have another question. So we are required to like write our interest in the major project in our statement of interest. So could you just introduce a little bit about this major project? Like what are we expected to write about?
Okay, it's a journalistic project. It's something ideally that you will publish or broadcast or have online as a multimedia project afterwards because it's so strong. So really think about something that really interests you and how you would tell that story. How you would tell it as a journalistic story. It's not an academic paper. So think about that. Usually it changes considerably. So you might come into the program thinking that you're going to be working in one area and telling that story. But after you've been in the program for a little bit, that could change entirely. But just give an indication of where your interests lie for that part of the application.
And maybe should I like kind of consider this part as a pitch? Like I kind of pitch my my interest or my story to the admission department.
Yeah, you can consider it. Well, the whole thing really is a pitch, right? Whenever you apply, whether it's for a grad program or a job, wherever, in a sense, it is a pitch. So absolutely, let us know why you're interested and why you think it would make a good journalistic research project, an MRP. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, David.
Hi, I had a quick follow-up to another person's question as well as one of my own. You had mentioned that for the portfolio, you shouldn't submit academic writing. I was wondering more about submitting things that we had published ourselves, like journalistic writing on a blog or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that all right, or is it?
Yes, you can submit that. Ideally, submit it alongside something that's been published, but you can also submit that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then I was also wondering, you had mentioned the magazine versus newsroom mastheads. I was wondering if that was the same thing. I know in the second year, you can write for either the journalistic review or the more like city reporting.
Yeah, the review of journalism is the magazine. Is
the magazine, okay.
Yeah, so it would be the review of journalism. So either you're working in a newsroom where you're doing everything, including multimedia. It's multimedia. It could be video pieces. And you're doing all of that in the newsroom, or you're focused on magazine, in which case it would be the review of journalism, and that would be the publication.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kay, is that another question?
Yes, it is another question.
Yeah.
What I was wondering is, when you're doing this program, I understand that it will be intense. I take it you...
Oh, sorry, can't hear.
Oh, my apologies. Would you be able to work and do this program?
People do. People say that it can be challenging. I would say if you're working, 8 to 10 hours a week, it's possible. But if you're working much more than that, I think it does. People tell me, students tell me, it becomes very challenging. But there's no way we're ever going to tell people not to work, because obviously people have to pay their rent. But it's something to take into consideration if you're thinking of a job that's, say, more than 10 hours anyway a week.
Okay, and one other final question. I've been publishing on Medium in the various magazines on that site.
Oh,
Would that
nice.
be
Mhm.
sufficient as well for the portfolio
Yes,
samples?
yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
That would count as publication. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
And Vikram?
Yeah, hello. I just had
Hi.
a question about portfolio. So I know you mentioned, and it says on the site that you can upload up to 6 samples. But is there, in addition to that, is there any sort of page limit or word count we should keep in mind for the whole portfolio?
No, just think in terms of your best work and what demonstrates your commitment to journalism. What have you done that would be interesting for an admissions committee to look at?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sophia?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a couple quick questions. So I guess my first question is about your CV. So what are some things that you would recommend to somebody applying for this program to like include on their CV, and like how to organize it, and like if they should include like published works on their CV or in the portfolio end of things?
Well, if you've done published work, say on a freelance basis, then that definitely has a place on the CV. So just organize it the way you'd normally organize a CV. In other words, put your work experience, if you have work experience that is relevant, put that, or really any work experience, just give us a sense of who you are. So list your work experience, list your education, but under work experience, if you've had journalistic experience, even if that's volunteer, make sure that that gets on the CV. So if you've worked for, say, a campus radio station, that should definitely go on the CV. Are there other specifics beyond that you want?
No, not exactly. I guess I'll just like work on my CV and then like keep all of that in mind. I think that's really good advice. So thank you. And then
think of your audience. Think of people who are sitting on a committee, and what they'd like to know is that you have a commitment to journalism. And if there's any way anything on your CV can suggest that, then that's great.
Okay, amazing.
Or
thank you so much.
communications or something that's related. So frame it that way so that we can see really quickly what you've done. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then I guess my second question, so I've been doing some research into like master's programs and funding. So does the school provide funding for this program? I know it's mostly course-based as opposed to like research-based, but like what does the funding side of things, like if you're admitted to the program, what does that look like?
Okay, there isn't a lot of funding, but Joni, and I know it varies slightly from year to year, but Joni, do you want to handle that one?
Now, the department does have some money that we do offer for all students who are actually admitted to the program are automatically considered for funding. And I mean, it's because the department budget is not very big. Each student would typically get around the same amount, give or take, depending on your grade. And you'll be automatically considered for those. Now, there is other funding that the university offers that you will also be considered for. And that type of funding is a lot more. It's sometimes 12,000 for a graduate scholarship, or sometimes it could go up to $15,000. And that's per year. But the university does have a lot of other scholarships that students can apply for, but you would have to look through and I'll add it to the chat. I'll add the webpage to the chat. But you would have to go through each of the scholarships because you yourself would know what you actually qualify for. There are some that have specific requirements, and that could just add to your funding pool. And along with scholarships, there's also opportunities to be a teaching assistant or a grading assistant. There are also research opportunities that are offered with the school. I think that's about all I can think of, but I can add it to the chat. Marsha, can you think of anything else, or?
I have a couple of, no, I can't think of anything else. But am I right in thinking when you say the 12 to 15,000, that is one incoming student who gets that amount of money?
That's correct.
So
That's
one
correct.
student gets that. I think this year, what the amount, if I remember, was something like 2,500. I know the second year MJs all got 2,500. And
Right.
beyond that, there are jobs as teaching assistants. There are jobs as research assistants. I'm aware of one research assistant. Do you know how much right now research assistants are getting?
No, not off the top of my head. It could be somewhere around $25 per hour.
Okay.
That was a few months ago that I actually.
Okay, so does that answer your, thanks, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it totally does. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ellie.
Hi, hello. So I have a couple of questions. So where can we see the program requirements? If there's a link for that, I would appreciate if you can paste it to the chat. And my second question is, I don't have any journalistic pieces, even not voluntary ones. So I have research papers that I have written about communication and media. Can I add them to my portfolio?
I'm hesitating because in the past, it really depends who's on the committee. If you really have nothing else, yes, you can add it. Have you considered, doing anything using that research you've done? Anything journalistic at all? You could write an example of how you'd write a journalistic piece related to your research, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea, because my research is generally about media and about the political side of things as well. So it's directly linked to journalism, I guess.
Well, it sounds really interesting. And it sounds like it would be a good basis for a journalistic article as well. And it also, it's a good background to have as a journalist. So if you can think of a way to incorporate it, if not, just include the research paper in your application then.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, Lily?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, I'm curious about the process of finding a supervisor for the major project and what that looks like.
You will be assigned, if you're in the program, in May of your first year, you'll be assigned a supervisor and a second reader. You'll be asked for your preferences, which aren't guaranteed, but you'll be asked for your preferences. And based on what the topic is, based on what the medium is you'll be working in, and based on the supervisor you've requested, you will be assigned. You don't need to indicate the person you want for your supervisor in your application. I know it does say that, but I think that's because that information goes across many schools and departments. And in some departments that are maybe more academic, that becomes something you should do. But you don't need to do that as you come into journalism.
Great,
Does that answer it? Okay. Estella?
Hi. I have one question. So I don't know anyone who is studying in this TMU program, but I really wish to talk to someone, like just to know their experience in this amazing program, and maybe have a better knowledge of like if I'm fitted in this program, if it's suitable for me. So I'm just wondering, do we have any kind of graduate school student ambassador?
There isn't
That I
an
can talk to.
ambassador, but there's a representative. And if you email me, I can put you in touch with the representative who sits on the school council. And I would guess that maybe after after it's less busy in December, she'd probably be happy to talk to you.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Where can I find your email? Sorry.
Yes, it's here. I should put it in the chat. Hang on. I'll put it in the chat. It's M2, like the number 2, Barber, BARBER, at tmu.ca. Here we go.
Okay.
There. Actually, Joni, have we switched automatically to tmu.ca, or should I have written ryerson.ca?
It actually should still be ryerson.ca.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because
Okay.
we don't, I'll put it in there for you, Marsha.
Okay, thank
Because we
you.
don't actually, that one change doesn't happen until after January.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and even then, when you forward, like all of the emails will be forwarded to your new email. So
For how long will that
sure.
happen?
I think maybe about 2 months or so, maybe a little bit
just
more.
2 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so
Thank
is
you.
that answers?
Yeah.
Okay, Rachel.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Well,
awesome. Thank you so much for having this discussion and opportunity. I just have a few questions about the research assistant opportunities offered that you were mentioning. Are those through the journalism school itself or through TMU in general?
there are other departments. Usually people tend to hire from their own schools or departments. In the journalism school, there are a few opportunities. And if a professor is looking for a research assistant, they'll post something. There is our administrative person will post those opportunities. If you're accepted, the next question would be, who's the person to get in touch with? And she can give you an overview of the opportunities. Not everybody gets to do that, but a few people do, and it is a helpful way to help finance the degree.
Fantastic. And when you submit your CV, cover letter, that kind of stuff for this degree program, yes. Is that what they use to then base hiring decisions, or is that a separate application process? Yes, for research assistantship.
You'd certainly meet with the professor. You'd give them a CV. You'd also meet with them. So that it's not like they'd be looking at the application and based on that, they'd be telling you, yes, we'd like you to come in as a research assistant. It's really, it happens on a more casual basis than that.
Okay, great. And sorry, last question. So the research assistant jobs, they are likely to be within the journalism field if that's what's offered within the school, or are there other opportunities as a research assistant?
Usually within the school. They're probably, Joni, do you know how widely other departments advertise for research assistants? I haven't seen that happen.
No, typically for research assistants, it's within the school. But I do know that teaching assistants and grading assistants, sometimes other schools may, send those to us because they have a load of jobs and they don't have enough students to fill them. For example, the English department, I know in the past, has sent a request over saying, could you notify your students about these teaching assistant opportunities. And then it would be up to you to, we would notify you, you would apply for them. And it typically is, what happens is the teaching professor would review your resume and your cover letter, and then they would contact you directly if they were interested, maybe to set up an interview or that kind of thing. But that although it is a casual kind of exchange, it is still very much like being hired outside of the school. So you would have to represent yourself well.
Right, of course. That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Isabel.
Hi, I apologize if someone's asked a similar question. I joined the call a little bit late, so I didn't get to hear the first few questions. I just had a more kind of personal question about applying with a portfolio. I'm currently working with the communications department for my school, and I've had a really cool opportunity to get to do journalistic work with them. But because I'm working with a department through my school, everything that gets published doesn't go directly under my name. It goes under the university's name. So just in regards of submitting some of those works for my portfolio, I've had my employer offer to write a reference along with it saying that these are my works, but what would you guys be looking for me to submit that?
Yes, an indication. If there's a way on the application that before we even look at the works, if you can let us know, I would say in the cover letter, be really clear that you have written these.
Okay.
That this is the work you've done and that you have written these. And so then you give us the context.
Okay, beautiful.
And it's great that you have pieces like that. So
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Chloe, I think hands up.
Chloe.
Hi. So I was also I think you might have said this before, but I just wanted clarification. How big is the entire journalism class like typically for each year?
Right now the MJ class is 19. So it's usually around 20.
Okay.
Some years it's been as high as 24. Right now we're capped at 22. So I would say 20, give or take.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I was also wondering for the resume, should it I know that typically when like you apply to jobs, it's supposed to be like a very concise document.
Yeah.
It should be like longer than a page, or like should be
a couple of pages is okay. It really depends what you have to list. But I agree with you, generally concise is better. CVs tend to be huge. I mean, 25 pages. It's not a CV, it's a resume. So a couple of pages is just fine.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Oh, wait, and then actually one last question.
Sure.
Are there any sort of tests or exams in this program, or is it just are the assignments typically just like
there are tests? So okay. in the journalism courses, there are quizzes. There are quizzes and tests. I can't think of one that has an actual exam. If you're taking courses ever outside the department, which wouldn't really apply, other departments do have exams, but no, the limit would be tests.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much.
Okay, David.
Hi. You briefly said this. I just wanted to make sure I'm clear on it relating to an earlier question. With the mastheads, the magazine one you can only take one elective.
That's correct.
Whereas the other one you can take 3.
Yes, although yeah. I'm going to alert you to this, that could change. There could be fewer electives for people taking the newsroom masthead. It's possible that it will be more compressed, but right now people can take 3 electives if they're taking the newsroom masthead. I'll tell you why. The newsroom masthead is just 1 semester, and the magazine masthead is the entire year, the entire academic year.
Okay. And one more question with the internships. You had listed some examples on the website of past, past examples. I was wondering, how likely is it to get the internship you want? And then how likely is it that that would then lead to a job?
Okay, well, those are important questions. So first of all, let's use CBC as an example. The way that works is people apply for a CBC internship. CBC takes X number of people, a limited number of people. So people go through an interview process. Before that happens, though, the school decides who will go forward for the interviews on the people that are even where the applications go in. And then at that point, CBC will interview the people the school puts forward and make a decision based on that. So some internships, that's probably the most competitive one, is the CBC one. But we always have people going to Globe and Mail, the Star, and less, not always to legacy media. Sometimes you'll figure out that there's a place you'd really like to do an internship, and you'll talk about that with the internships coordinator and end up going there to do the internship. So how likely is it? It really depends on where you want to do the internship. For some internships, very likely, because it's a place that you found where you think you could make a contribution and you want to be there. That's also the answer in a way to the hiring question. A lot of people who've gone to CBC have been given contracts at CBC, and some are working there full time now. Same goes for the other outlets. If you do a phenomenal job and make yourself indispensable at the internship, you're in a much more competitive position to be hired, and they know you. So in some ways, the main advantage of doing a degree like this is to make those kind of connections. And I'd say the internships arguably might be the most helpful course that you'll take, because the opportunity to be in a media landscape, working there and networking is indispensable. But David, did you have follow-up to that?
No, that answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll just check the chat. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions in the chat. So Joni, do you want to put your email address in the MJ email address? Oh, you have. So before we conclude, you see in the chat the mj@ryerson.ca email address. And I'll get you in a second, Kate. The mj@ryerson.ca address is really useful, especially for administrative issues if you're having trouble getting your application in. If it's an academic question that has to do with the School of Journalism, because I'm on faculty there, it's good to ask me about that. And that's m2barber@ryerson.ca. Kay, what's your question?
Sorry, I had to take it off of unmute. My question is, now we're looking at going through this program. We've heard how journalists are not valued, it's becoming difficult to find work, and so on and so forth. With that in mind, what kind of range of salaries would we be looking at
that's a
after
really
graduating?
good question. I'm going to answer with an experience I've had recently with a student. So the student was trying to get a job out west, was offered a job out west in a newsroom. She was offered only 33,000. It was more, it wasn't a large market. It was more of an entry-level job. Someone else I know was offered a job at Canadian Press, and his starting salary they offered him was 52,000. So I would say the salaries are not high. If you start to build a career somewhere, like CBC, the salaries do get better exponentially the longer you're there. But generally, journalistic salaries are not high because it's what the market will bear. And so many people want to do the jobs that they're able to get away with quite low entry-level salaries. Does that help, Kate?
Oh, it helps immensely, because what I'm wondering, if we know that the entry-level salaries are going to be low, yet we're coming from other fields. I'm coming from a different field, and we're applying for this, and we don't have all of the qualifications. Do they consider our passion for this as well in the administration?
You mean, do you mean employers? Who in the
Sorry, to get into the school,
Oh yeah.
when they're taking things into account.
Oh, yes, yes. We want, and that's often in the cover letter. You get a sense as to whether someone is really committed to going into this field. So the answer is yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I think that covers it. You have the email address for any follow-ups, the 2 email addresses. And thank you all for coming and for your interest in the program. So have a great night. Bye now.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
The future is creative. The Creative School.